So what are we talking about today? Oh, you were about to say something important? My bad. There was a huge, like, deep breath.
I literally took a deep breath.
You're welcome.
Oh, man. I hope this makes it in the episode. All right. So today we're continuing our series, the Young, Gifted, and Black-ademic series, where we're giving a peek into academic life and just basically explaining stuff, because there's a whole lot of unwritten rules, things that you don't really get told when you enter a career in academia or start grad school, start real school, start whatever. So,
Real school, really?
what any school, academic, preschool, whatever. Have your toddler listen to this. They'll love it.
Mine does.
She does love it. That's true. So this episode is going to be about the dissertation, because lots of people start grad school or think they want to do a PhD, know they want to do a PhD, but nobody really tells you like what a dissertation is and what all is entailed and how you write it and all those wonderful things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We've had 2 other previous episodes also in this topic, so go ahead and take a listen to those. And you can cut this part, Allison. I want to say what the episode numbers are and the topics.
I was wondering what happened.
So episode 39 is the first in the series where we talk about just who goes into academia, and what makes sense. And do you remember what the second one is? Episode 42 is also about academia, and we talk about picking the right graduate school for you, identifying support, funding. We talk about lessons that we've learned. I'm reading the episode description. We talk about pivotal lessons that we learned along the way to help make our path smoother. So just take a listen to those. So this is number 3, which is the dissertation. We also have one coming up that's on mentorship. So just, it's a good little series. T-shirts to come that'll say Young, Gifted, and Black-ademic. We're getting those out. One thing I want to remind you that all of these pieces of advice and things that we tell you are based on our own experiences. So your mileage may vary. We are both engineers. Jeremy was his civil environmental engineering and all that stuff.
Just civil.
Just civil engineering. I was in computer science and engineering.
That's why you wanted to give me extra stuff. I see.
I wanted to give you all the words. And we're Black, we are women, so we may have different experiences than you. And we're also, at a large research one university in the South. And, I went to a large research one in the North, Jeremy in the South, but somehow we have lots of similar experiences. But
because we're both Black and women and in engineering. So,
that part.
Yeah. A lot of experiences. I mean, even just listening to the podcast, people probably feel like, oh, y'all have similar stories.
Exactly.
But then there's like nuance.
Yeah, there's little nuances. So your mileage may vary. All right, so let's get into it. So Jeremy, what is a dissertation? Like, I know it's this big old document with all these words that somehow transforms into a PhD degree. Like, it's what you exchange for a PhD, but what is it? And why is it so difficult?
First of all, I love that you asked me this question. Like, you are not the tenure track faculty member on this phone call and like advise students.
Well, I've been doing a lot of talking. You can say some things.
I mean, that's valid. And theoretically, I completed one to be here. But
and for the people watching, you have to talk about.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. So first of all, I'm wearing this little crown headband on my head because when I defended my dissertation, at the end of my PhD, there was there was no room. There were people on the floor, people on furniture that wasn't a chair.
I was there. I was on furniture.
We had to turn people away. Anyways.
Yes. And she never advertised it.
No, I didn't. Somebody gave me this little crown, and I adore it so very much because it's like they just understood me. So it's a little headband with gold, like sequin glitter type things with 3 little pom-poms on the points. And I love it. I love it so much. Cute. But yeah, so it always reminds me of that day, this little thing, and it just happened to be near my desk today. I have a toddler, stuff moves. So yeah. But a dissertation, to your question, is really just ultimately you sharing all of the research that you've done related to your research topic that your work during graduate school was centered around. And so we talked about this in an earlier episode, but for you to get a PhD, your role is really just to create new knowledge in your discipline, right? So you either expand on existing knowledge in a meaningful way, or you create something entirely new that pushes like the boundaries of like research in your discipline, which is a really exciting prospect to be like, at the time that I finished my degree, I am the foremost expert in this space. So your dissertation encompasses a lot of different things, right? It has all the literature that you've read that's relevant to the question that you're asking. All of like the question you're going to ask, some objectives that you have for your work, describing how you're going to go about like, or how you went about collecting the data and analyzing the data and discussing all of the detail related to that, because that's a lot of the time. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like that's primarily the work that you contribute. And then like kind of summarizing the key takeaways and then putting all the references that you use at the end. And sometimes they can be as short. I've seen one that was like in the 70 pages length, which is very odd to me.
Is that like physics or chemistry?
Listen. And then they can be 500 pages, you know, like depending on the discipline that you're in and what is typically seen within them. So,
yeah.
And that's usually because there's like appendices of data, lots and lots and lots of data that go into them too. So it's a culmination,
or anything. Yeah.
So it's a culmination of most of what you've done during your PhD program that's around your research.
Yeah. I 100% agree. Yeah, it's everything you've done, your whole contribution. And but why do you think, so the other question we have is like, why is this so difficult? And like one thing that I think is what makes it challenging is that oftentimes, you know, when you have a really large undertaking, anything you have to do, it's really easy to be like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to make such a large contribution. Like you don't do your dissertation in one day. Like it's really easy to think about how big it is, but not think about all the little steps it takes along the way to get to it. So usually you'll have 2 or 3 smaller, you know, sub goals on the way to answering a question. So then you can break down those sub goals into either, you know, depending on what you're doing, there might be experiments or simulations or testing that you're running or, you know, whatever it is, you know, those things all contribute to the dissertation. And theoretically, you should be writing it up the entire time. So like once you have to submit this large document, theoretically, it doesn't always happen like that, but
it definitely does not.
It sort of happened like that for me.
Okay.
But yeah, because sometimes like before the dissertation is a proposal. Mm-hmm. And for the proposal, you you say what it is you're going to do. And the best case scenario is that your dissertation is your proposal plus data. Mm-hmm. Like you did everything that you said you're going to do and you're just adding, and this is what I found to it. So, but yeah, it's oftentimes difficult. And also people don't like to write sometimes. Like writing is not everybody's favorite jam. Yeah. So some people write in spurts where it's like, oh, I just need to clear my whole calendar and write. Some people write in, hey, I need just, an hour a day, 2 hours a day, whatever works for you. But it's hard to kind of identify like what your writing style is too.
Well, I think it's so for me, what made it difficult was there's no like real point of reference.
Yeah, there's no guide
for what it has to look like. Right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned like depending on your discipline, it could be 70 or 500 pages, right? So I think it's also worth mentioning like just the process of a PhD so that people kind of understand like how we get to the dissertation stage, right? So you come in, and typically when you come in, you don't necessarily have exactly what you're going to do for your dissertation day one.
Right.
That takes time to develop. Sometimes it takes a couple of years or 4.
Right.
You know, like that is something that is highly dependent upon who you're working with and if they have access to either the research funds to get work done, or if they allow, and I do mean allow, you the opportunity to create your own space within the space that they work in.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really variable. So you come in, you take some classes, and then at some point you may take a test to make sure you're competent in those classes. That's called your qualifying exam. Or you may also have to do a proposal defense. And so sometimes those are written and oral things. So you write a document, which is what Kyla referenced, that explains like what you're proposing to do for your research with your dissertation. Or you get asked a bunch of questions about the research that you're supposed to do, and you give it like a presentation on it instead of the whole written document thing. And then you might take a couple more classes, like just to kind of help you develop some skills that you may not have needed before you got to the point where you're like, this is the work I'm going to do. But from like that point forward, it's like all research.
Yeah.
And you spend years typically finalizing the work. So you're in whatever setting makes sense for the type of work you're doing, running tests, talking to people,
Yeah.
building something. You know, it just depends on what your focus is.
You know what else too? I think a lot of people don't do well with unstructured time because after, you know, the classes that you've taken, you've already decided, you know, this is what's necessary and sufficient to finish, or while you're deciding what's necessary and sufficient, you know, you have, if you're not taking classes, you just have these large blocks of time. Like if your advisor is a little more lenient and doesn't care what time you come in or where you do your work, sometimes that's like a little challenging because like you could theoretically do your work anytime.
Yeah, when you get to that research phase, it's very much like that. And so usually that's around the time you start working on your actual dissertation document, because you don't want to wait until you've collected all the data because then you're behind.
Yeah.
Right. And that proposal, like Kyla said, may not inform your dissertation document at all.
Yeah.
Like your topic could switch. And now what? Like, so you've got to really focus on like, what am I doing? How am I doing it? Why am I doing it? Like all that stuff. And so, you know, there's an order that people sometimes follow with writing that. And it happens while in tandem while you're still like collecting data and analyzing data.
Yeah.
And then that's at the end, you've got your whole document done and you make a presentation that synthesizes all those 100+ pages of information, and you tell everybody like, this is what I did. This is why it's important.
And you give a 40-minute presentation on literally the last 4 to 6 years of your life.
and you get a crown at the end if your friends love you. So that's like the whole process, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, probably sounds pretty awful to a lot of you. Because I have to admit, like, I was not trying to do this PhD situation. It just happened to me. And I think, like, I have the personality to be able to, like, adjust and readjust. And I'm good with unstructured time because I'm a planner and I like making schedules.
Yeah.
Like that weirdo that does that. So
yeah, I like making schedules so I can see how I can fit in other stuff. Not so I can get my work done, but how much other stuff can I fit in and still get my actual work done?
That checks out, actually.
Yeah.
Looking at your calendar.
I'm like, I got 45 minutes right here. I can do something to that. But yeah, if you're somebody who, you know, and also we've been trained all through school. You have a bell in high school that rings and tells you where to go. When you get to college, you know, have classes at set times. So like, it's weird once you don't have to be anywhere at a specific time, or there's some
Well, and
small
nobody
amounts of
can
things.
tell you what to write. Like,
Yes.
nope, whatever. It's really brutal to like go through the process, and I think being on the other side, wow, it's been almost 5 years now. Like being on the other side and like having been on students' committees and seeing the other side of the process, like it's equally as hard
Yeah.
to help guide someone through the process. It's not easy. And sometimes like, you know, you're on a committee of for a student where it's like, I don't even know what, like this is a foreign language to me.
Exactly.
And so how do I help them synthesize the information?
That's a really good point, too, because I'm helping one of my students with her proposal right now. And even though we're in human centered computing, I keep telling her this is also human centered writing, because your committee is not an expert for the most part in your work. Like your chair, you know, your dissertation advisor is probably the person who knows this work the best. But, you know, everyone else has reasonable intelligence, but you have to break everything down for them. You need to make sure everything is like properly labeled, that everything is clearly spelled out. You're not assuming that they already know something. And when you work in something for a really long time, it's easy to leave out details because it's second nature to you. And you're like, oh, everybody knows that's how you do it. But, you know, everybody ain't on your committee. So you need to make sure, you know, that it's very digestible, like you said, like helping students to like make sure that the committee, whoever comes upon it in the future, because you know your dissertation ultimately gets published at your school, you know, as an actual document, and people can look it up
People reference them.
People can reference your dissertation. So if you do a crappy job and you're in a research area where people are like, oh my gosh, did you read that dissertation? I couldn't follow it. They claim they had these one results. I don't even know what they were doing, you know, versus this person laid out everything so clearly that I could now come behind them, replicate the results, or, you know, modify the way I need to. Like you want to be that person where what you've written is actually helpful, because the whole point of the dissertation is to add knowledge to the field. And if you read a dissertation where, you know, you're hopping from point A to point C to point L and nobody knows what's happening, you know, what did you spend those 4 years for?
So,
or 5 or 6 or 7.
7. So when you think about like how to help someone prepare to get to that point, like what are those steps? What does that look like for you as someone who's like helped students graduate?
To get to the point of writing?
Yeah,
or
like
just
getting their dissertation done. Like how do they get there?
Jeez. Woo. Well, it's a multi-step process. So theoretically, as I said before, a dissertation is basically the execution of your proposal, or if things have changed, you're writing what those changes are. But the first part is having a good topic. And I think the way that you find your topic is by reading. Like you can't just walk in the door of your PhD program and assume that you know everything that's going on in a research area and you can now contribute, because what you may be wanting to do could already be done. It could be something that's not feasible. It could be something that there's a number of things. So, and also just because no one else is doing it doesn't mean that it should be a topic that you explore, because just because no one else is doing it isn't enough. You know, you can't have a research island, what I like to call it. Like you have to have other research that is related or you can draw upon or connects to, because you'll spend your whole time arguing why you did everything and justifying every single step of your process if there's no other research that's related that you can say, oh, I did this because this other paper that's kind of like this did that, or I used this method because I found in this paper, I used this value because this other paper found this. Like you need to have other research that you can pull upon, or you can draw from rather, to help with your work. So picking a good topic by reading, synthesizing. One of the cheat codes that I usually tell the students, the rumor is, and I won't say the person's name, when I was at Michigan, you know, there was a guy who finished really, really fast. We were like, what in the world did he do? And the rumor is that, you know, most papers, you know, that you most research papers have a future work section where
Mm-hmm.
they say, all right, we did all of this. And then they say, hey, also in the future, we need to do this. So there was a student that basically went to the most recent top conference and basically synthesized all of the future work sections and was like, okay, it sounds like the everybody's moving in this direction or this is an area. So he basically used the future work section to inform
That's smart.
his work, and it was smart. Like that's the cheat code right there, because you don't have to spend so much time figuring out what's unknown, because they're literally telling you at the end of the document, like,
And
hey,
they're
we've
pointing you to the literature
yes,
that's relevant too.
there's exactly. So read. It's impossible to know how you can contribute without actually reading in your field, because then you might even come upon it and say, actually, I don't even like this problem, or the way that this field solves this problem doesn't jive with what I want to do, or
Mm-hmm.
you can invent other ways to solve it, but it's just helps you to know if this is even something that you want to explore. So first is getting a good topic, boom.
Yeah.
So then, what questions you'd like to answer within that topic. So that goes hand in hand with the topic and what hasn't been explored. So you come up with, for my lab, it's about 3 questions that you'd like to
Mm.
answer. So your mileage may vary, but about 3 questions. And usually we use the first one as your proposal. And that's basically like something that just shows this is something worth studying. So whatever your dissertation is kind of hinging on, we have that first study to be like, all right, I'm in the right direction. So it's some research publishable unit where, you do some body of work, some amount of work, it gets published, and then it shows your committee that it's worth studying. It shows yourself that it's worth studying. It shows the community, hey, look out for what's to come. So I also like for them to kind of give a prelude to what else they're going to do, so people can kind of be on the lookout for it in the future work section. And then yeah, so have the questions, do a little piece of it to ensure the feasibility of it, and then start start executing it. So I know I made
That's
it
good.
sound kind of simple, but
It's not. I think, I mean, you're articulating it in a way that makes it simplistic, but it's not trivial at all
right,
to read through academic papers and understand them enough
right,
to make inferences about like the direction the field is going and how you can contribute meaningfully. So this involves like a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations
mm-hmm,
and a lot of trial and error and a lot of failing. And I think that's like a piece of the conversation that often is missing when we talk about like getting a PhD, is that you're not going to just come in the door, have an idea, get it approved, start the work, the data's going to work out, and you're
right,
going to write it all up and leave. Like, if that were how it worked, we'd have a lot more people with PhDs.
right. We get them in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of running into brick walls face first.
Yeah,
And I don't mean that to sound like really harsh, but failure is inevitable. It's like part of life. And when your job is to come up with something new, you're gonna fail.
yeah,
And so I don't like not doing well at things. Um as like a type A personality, it was
mm-hmm.
a really hard thing for me to kind of like overcome, like having the experiences of like, that didn't work. Now I have to figure out how to do it a different way.
Yeah, because
And
before
that,
failure was a bad grade in classes, but
yeah,
now it's like,
and I didn't get those.
yeah,
So,
it's just failure's like lost time. But
hmm
it's also, I don't think it's like, I think it's also part of the learning process
it
though,
is.
too.
I mean, I learned so much from like things that I tried that didn't work out that I could then like iterate and try to figure out, okay, well, that didn't work because of this.
Right.
So because of this, now I need to do this maybe. And like,
Exactly.
oh, okay, well, that mostly worked. So like that process I think was kind of cool because I like to create things. And so you kind of see stuff build and grow from the failures, and then you get to the end and you're just like, I did this. Like, I did
Exactly.
this. I made this a thing.
Yeah. I would say for me, I had the failest of fails, like the failiest fail.
Okay.
Did my proposal, everything, everybody agreed on it. Great. You have this research topic. Great. Do my first experiment. And, it's running, and, my work is in 3D sound, and it's in localization and how people basically can find things in space that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But, everybody failed so hard on the first one where we had to like step back and ask fundamental questions like, are they actually hearing what we think they are hearing? Can they remember? So, like, even though my proposal, everybody said, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like that should work. We had to take it down to the ABCs of just hearing in 3D space and then adding things, because basically I was asking them to do something that was really, really difficult, and we didn't know what the issue was. So it's okay if you decide on some research questions and they do not work out, because then, it can help you to figure out, okay, what's the real question that needs to be asked here? And one of the cool parts is that the thing that I was trying to do, my students are like exploring that now, but I had to do like let's make sure this step's working. Okay, that step wasn't working. And this other step was not working. Okay, now we can put things in place to get them to work, so you can build up to that. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I spent all this time figuring out a topic and figuring out these research questions and it didn't work. What do I do? It should give you some indication of where other research is needed or what the real questions are.
Um, yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, that you do get like additional opportunities for like future work sometimes as a result of some of those failures. Like, it may not be something you can address right now. And the other thing is, like, research questions sometimes change, right?
Yeah.
Like, they aren't like a cemented in place type of thing. And I say that as someone who researched asphalt concrete. So,
and now she researches mentorships.
so yeah, I agree. One of the things that I was hoping that you might talk about, maybe, and I know that you're good at this, so I know that you can talk about it. There's a toddler like in the background.
She sounded like a T-Rex.
Did you hear? What that was? I was just about to say,
yes.
like, she screamed like a banshee. Like, what is going on? Writing, right? Like, developing skills for writing is something that I think, you may come into a PhD program like as a competent writer, but technical writing is very different than, compositional writing, right? Like, or like narrative writing. They're very different things.
Yes.
I don't know what the right word is because I'm not a writer, and I'm sorry, mommy, that English is not my thing. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Do we need to pause? Do you want to go check them?
Rod is shushing her, and
I don't think it's working. Okay.
This episode is gonna be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever the term is for non-technical writing, just like regular writing.
Yeah.
Not writing for
creative writing.
Oh, maybe creative. But there's other types of writing.
There's like novel writing, or I don't know,
No,
child.
I don't
That's
know.
why I don't do that.
Okay, I don't do it either. That's why we have a podcast.
Exactly.
Anyways, like, getting those skills, I think, is something that is necessary. And I know that, like, faculty, I say this as a faculty member, but faculty who like advise graduate students, they often will help students get integrated into writing by like a stepwise process where it's like, first, you're going to help so-and-so write an article that they're writing. And then, you're going to take a larger role in an article that's being written in the lab. And then you're going to write your own article type of thing. And then your proposal will be something that you write. So you have like multiple steps where it's like you're refining those skills.
And if you're not, you should ask to join those kinds of projects going on so you can get that experience.
Mm-hmm. And I think reading the other articles in your discipline help like give you like a frame of reference for the type of expectation that people have. Like I know my advisor was a very he was a stickler for like certain verb usage.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you couldn't use certain verbs because he was like, we're not doing that. Like,
Oh, wow.
you're not
Yeah.
whatever, whatever the verb might
I had a
be.
list of outwords as well.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I'll figure out another way to say that doesn't indicate that I'm, changing the world. Like impact.
Oh,
Impact
yeah.
has a specific meaning, and
Yeah.
we're not impacting things.
I'm like, well, I am. Speak for yourself. I'm impacting the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say like my dissertation advisor, he was so kind. My first version of my proposal, it was like from the dawn of time, man has yearned to like it was
Wow.
really that dramatic. And he was like, Kyla, this is lovely. I sat down with drinks with some coffee and loved this. However, this is not what we're doing.
That
Like
is so funny.
he was so nice. And like I just remember I was in his living room because like we had a meeting scheduled, but he had to get his windows painted that day. Don't ask why I remember this so vividly. He had to get his windows painted and he can't shut them because then like the windows will get painted shut. So he had to stay with the windows open all day. He's like, someone's going to break into my house.
Right.
So just come over here while I sit with the windows open and tell you about why your proposal reads like a novel and not actual technical
Cute.
writing.
Very cute.
He was like, I enjoy reading it, but this isn't what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's really dry in comparison.
it is
to,
very
like,
dry, right? Like Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. Like there is no
Like how he
emotion
speaks.
behind it. Yeah, how he speaks. Yes, there's no emotion. It is active tense. The subject, verbs, predicate. The subject, verbs, predicate. The subject, verbs, the predicate.
Yeah, it's very matter of fact, and
Yeah.
it's not how we speak, and that.
Unless you are
that's-
Sheldon Cooper from Big
well,
Bang Theory.
I don't know how many of our listeners are. So
Yeah,
I'm just
but
gonna
it's
say it
not
like
how
that.
most of us speak. It's not natural either.
No. Not at all. So that, and like, if, for example, English is your second language, like, recognize that it's okay to tell people like, I need help with this.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who just didn't learn English well, like, my mom has a degree in English and I didn't even really for real know what I was doing. Go to writing centers on your campus, go to workshops on writing, go to other professional development at like conferences and things related to writing.
There's YouTube now. Like YouTube was not out doing all the magic it was doing beforehand. Like Coursera, there's writing classes and scientific writing classes. Make sure or technical writing,
Yeah.
making sure you're honing in on those.
That's a pro tip, but also make like a writing group. And this is for everyone, like whether you're a strong writer or not, like having accountability
Oh,
to
yeah.
other people to write. Like I would get messages from Kristen Grant. You know Kristen.
Yeah.
So Dr. Grant, he would send me a message and be like, are you writing? And I would be like, no, leave me alone. But just having somebody check in and make sure like you're doing the things that you said you're going to do. Because I was really not trying to write. It was him, Rod, obviously my husband. Even like my brother would sometimes message me and be like, hey, are you right? Because they
It's
know,
leave me alone. They know that you need to write to get out.
they know you need to write to get out. And they also know like, this isn't why you decided to get a PhD to write
Yeah.
stuff, right? Like, so most of us, we've been told like, oh, get a degree in engineering and you won't have to write.
A lie from the pit. That is a lie.
Incorrect. So,
Right.
it was a battle between
Yeah.
myself and the laptop. And ultimately I won.
That is hilarious.
The dog has burst her way into the room.
Oh, okay. Hey, Gracie. I would say, like, I've also seen other versions of it where, like, people get on Zoom and, like, you don't have to talk. You just check in at a certain time and you just say, hey, I'm going to work on the related work section of my introduction, or I'm cleaning up formatting, or I'm blah, 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 whatever it is you need to do. And then you do that.
Yeah, mine's the low-tech option.
Yeah.
You
just have people bugging you. Yeah, the high-tech can be like everybody kind of checking in, saying what they're working on, and then you might reconvene in an hour and 2 hours and, just say what you're working on or what you finished. I've seen versions of it where you may, I'm in a group where we say, this week I am doing blank. And then we check in, really quickly about, okay, I really ain't do that this week, but this week, but just because that someone is going to ask you about what you did, and then people who aren't afraid to be like, okay, this has been on your list for 3 weeks in a row. What is really happening here? What can I help you with? And sometimes you can help each other with stuff. Like, you might be having an issue that someone else has already figured out, and it's like, oh yeah, just use this, or just read that, do this,
and
whatever.
also like, whatchamacallit, what was I gonna say? Dang it, it was right there. How, like, your advisor is not gonna do that for you.
Not at all.
Like, like, they're just not. It's not anything against you as a human.
Nope.
Right? Like, this is your journey that you have to go on. And, like, while they may check in on you in general to be like, hey, like, are things progressing? They are probably not gonna be like, did you write today?
Right. They will not. And if they have to, you are in trouble, because professors are busy and do not have time to micromanage. So if you are at the point where your professor needs to micromanage you, just start packing your bag and or start turning a corner, because if you got to turn a corner and, just show them that they don't have to ask you all the time what you have been doing that day. I feel like that's usually the mark of when you are near the end, like, and not the good end of you about to graduate. It's like, we might have to separate our ways if I have to be on you to do the things that you said you wanted to do.
Yeah.
This dissertation.
I will say, like, sometimes, for some of us, it's really easy to get, like, so focused on what we're doing that, like, you lose communication with other people. Like, you just, like, bury your head in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the sand, but maybe it's in the laptop and in all the papers and all
in
the
concrete.
numbers. And no, for me, it was like all of the data, because I had hundreds of thousands of lines of data that I saw.
I recall, because your Excel was freezing when it was time to, like, open it. Like, yeah.
My computer didn't have the power to handle the data that I had, and that's a whole other conversation for another day. But like, I was a fake computer scientist. I've told y'all this. Like, I was making little algorithms in my Excel file to be able to handle the data, and it was cool, but it was also, like, just not a thing that I loved. And so you get, like, really bogged down at looking at things, and when you look at a lot of numbers and data, like, your brain starts confusing things and, like, transposing stuff, and it's like, wait, did I already do that? Did I not do that? So like, it's really easy to forget, like, oh, I have an advisor.
Yeah.
And they probably need to know, like,
what I'm doing.
I'm still here, and I'm still working, and I have an update when I have something to update you on.
Right.
But right now, I'm just staring at these numbers and these graphs, and they're still not making sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, usually if you're in, like, hey, I'm still working mode, that's different from I have the same to-do list item. It's like, no, I did all these 5 things and stuff ain't working, but I am still making forward motion.
Or I tried to do the 5 things.
Right. Well, no, I did 5 things trying to accomplish 1 thing.
Right.
But
anyways, I feel like we're in the weeds right now.
Yeah.
So, dissertation, you work on it.
Accountability.
What does it look like? So,
like, the pieces of it?
Yeah. I have a mentor. Her name is Angela Lendner. She's
Aw.
amazing. I love her very much. And she was my external committee member for my dissertation committee. So you typically have 4 or 5 people who have PhDs
Yeah.
and they serve as your committee. And then one of those people is somebody who's like outside of like your direct discipline. So Angela was my person. She's an environmental engineer. And
Makes
so,
sense.
yeah. But she actually did some concrete research when she was in school.
Oh, that's
Anyways, that's for
cool.
another day. So, she drew me this picture of an hourglass shape and then put the sections of the dissertation in the hourglass so that I could like visualize
Mm-hmm.
what it looked like. So, you start with your introduction and then your literature review and then like your methods section and then you get down to like this is what I did.
Right.
So that's like the data analysis and all that stuff. And then you start broadening back again where it's like, here's my discussion. Here are my conclusions and my recommendations.
And this is how I
Voila.
conquered the world.
And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. It makes so much sense.
Yes.
Like, big picture, the literature review is an overview.
Yes.
And the introduction is usually like the last thing you write because you don't
write
know.
it last because it's going to change. You don't know what you're introducing.
You don't know.
Because you have
until-
not done it.
So
yet.
you can start like usually. This is my personal. I encourage people start with the literature review. You
Yeah.
should be doing it anyway. You should have been done it.
Exactly.
So there should be a bunch of stuff that you can reference
Yeah.
and just put it on the paper because you don't know like what story you're trying to tell because it's a story.
You're making
like,
up the story as you go along. And the
So-
introduction is like, let me introduce you to this story. But you haven't written the story yet.
Yes. So in the literature review, you can lump things together that relate to each other, but you don't know like what I need to put first and what I need to put last.
Right.
So just start putting stuff in, and then you can move it around later.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say when we were on the subject of like picking a topic, I would say if your program doesn't already encourage you to do this, you should do a literature review of your area because it helps you to one already know what what's the current research, what do we know already, what don't we know, where are the holes, and then that's your background section of your dissertation document. If you do a really good job at it, and that can be your first publication of you like synthesizing these areas, or you might have 2 different
People do
areas that
that.
are coming together. So having that lit review is really important because, and we also moved to that in computer science, where instead of having a qualifying exam where we just test people on these random subjects, we do something that is more relevant to their research and have them write a paper that I like, similar to what I just discussed, to know what is going on in their research area, synthesize what's happening, and then talk about or discuss what should happen in the future. Because basically you're saying, this is everything that's here. Here's my lane. This is what is not. And talking about, where future research needs to go. You don't have to know the exact questions, but you can talk about the topics broadly and some of the findings broadly and talk about what can be added or what, just any type of contribution that is needed there.
And we've been saying like literature review. A literature review is looking at scholarly publications related to your discipline or the topic that you're trying to study.
Yeah.
So that's really all it is. And then like pulling out the high level, like this is what this article said.
Yeah.
And connecting it to what someone else said in their article, right?
Yeah.
So like to get that done, you typically are using like your library system and not like your local library, your school's library system,
Right.
Which has access to like these large databases of information that's like scholarly publications. You can search Google Scholar for articles. You can even just like go to websites for conferences.
Yep.
And a lot of conferences have articles that you can
Or proceedings.
yeah, proceedings is what they call them, from the conferences, from the presentations that were given there. So there's a lot of opportunity to like engage with the librarian. So don't forget about them as a resource, because that's like their whole MO. Like librarians at your school, that's why they're there, to help
When
you
I
get
met
access.
the research librarians, I was like, so you're here to help me do what I need to do? Like, and that's just what you see here in this desk can help people with.
I know. It's a secret.
Yeah.
It's not a secret to y'all who are listening. So,
Yeah, utilize and find the research librarians, because a lot of people don't at all. Like they can help you with your lit review and scour places you may not have scoured and use their Jedi mind tricks to find things. And like, let's say there's even like a paper that you don't have access to or it's behind a paywall. Many universities have a way where you can specify, you know, the title, where it is and all that, and they'll get it for you. And
you can tell them, or like they might have a system, like we have an interlibrary loan system at our university. So, you know, there are ways to get access other than like, let me just send an email to this person.
Right.
If they're alive.
Yeah. So, that part too.
Yeah.
She's not emailing Piaget to ask for stuff. I'm just saying. But you know, I like the meta talk about the dissertation, because it is definitely broad to specific and then back broad again. And once you kind of get the purpose of each of the parts, it makes writing it a lot easier. So one thing that I know is a weakness for students, and one thing that we usually, and this is back to the proposal, when you're, you know, talking about what you plan to do, people plan to plan. Like, oh, I'm going to do an experiment where I measure blank. And I usually tell students to write those things out as though someone else was going to carry out the experiment that is not you. Like they don't have any of the information inside of your head. So to write all of the details out in a way that there are no questions left, and how you're going to analyze it in a way. And it's okay if it changes, but you just need to show that you have thought deeply about this idea and how you're going to go about investigating it, and how you're going to analyze your results after you've done that.
Yeah, I think a way to help people like think through stuff like that is to have someone else look at it and see if they can make it make sense.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, in your head, because you have all of the knowledge, you have blind spots.
Right.
And so you can't see the forest for the trees with some of that stuff. Like, you just need a fresh set of eyes to be like, what did you mean by this?
Right. And you haven't explained what this terminology is. Why are you using this acronym?
Which is why having a group of people working in tandem with you is really valuable.
Yeah.
You know, you typically take the contents of your dissertation and make a presentation, you know, at the end for everyone, like in your defense. And so, like, I had multiple meetings where I worked on my defense content, and it was like I took feedback. The first session, it was like I put way more information. This is my pro tip to y'all. Put way more information than was necessary on purpose. On purpose. And then I let them tell me it was way too much information. I think you should just do this, 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 and this. Okay. Delete, 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 delete.
Yep. Or hidden slide, hidden slide, hidden slide. You know,
move to the
just
end,
in case somebody asks you at the end.
Right. Put it after the reference, whatever. Thank you slide. And then, you know, now I have what I need. But you can't get to that point if you haven't done the work and you haven't articulated it in a way that other people can understand.
Yeah. I think that's also, I feel like everything always goes back to community, because I know in grad school, like as people were finishing up, we read each other's dissertations. So
you did?
Yes,
Wow.
Not only did we read each other's dissertations, we would schedule times where we would watch each other's presentations for anything. And it was almost like nuck if you buck in the room, because everybody's in engineering, but like, you know, you do your presentation and we let you get through the whole thing, but you know, we're going to tell you every single slide, what needs to change, what needs to this. But it's good when your friends who are in and out of your major can give you commentary, because then one, that leaves less for your advisor to have to like help you polish. And two, you know how clear it is because someone like Jeremy said who's not in your field, if they can figure out what you're doing or the gist of what you're doing, you know, without being in your field, then you know that it's coming across really well, and like your advisor can maybe comment on like technical details or things like that. But yeah, the community, like, and you know, if you know, if somebody came and gave you all this feedback on your part, and we even had somebody assigned to write down the feedback and receive it for you as you were, you know, listening. But you know, we did that for each other as a community because, you know, one, you want that done for you, and two, we're all here to succeed. So and plus,
so
we don't want to get embarrassed in front of our advisor. So it's like, let me make this as polished as it can be before I show it to this advisor person, so I don't look crazy.
My lab mates did that for me, but like my person who didn't know the things was Allison, who is the person who edits all of our podcast
Hey, Allison,
episodes.
Girl.
She's my adopted child. But she was
she's
also
a whole
like,
grown up.
listen, she was like a Trojan horse. Okay.
Oh,
So
wow.
like I asked, could I have someone who, you know, isn't in our discipline there? Right? But Allison has been there. You know, she's listened to me talk about all the things. So she knows what I'm doing.
Oh, yes.
So she comes and she asks all the right questions, like to the point where my advisor is like, how does she know? You know? And he was answering her questions because he was so engaged. And I was like, oh, really?
I'll write this down.
So yeah, like it really helped me like refine things in a way. Like I highly suggest having somebody who can come in and be like, let me ask questions for their clarity, obviously, but with a knowledge, like some basic knowledge about what you're doing, not just someone who totally has no idea, because it'll be really hard for them to get up to speed. So talk to people about what you're doing.
And they can help you find like logical errors too, because I remember I was presenting something. It's like, oh, this is the challenge here. That's a challenge here. And someone's like, well, why don't you just do blah, blah, blah? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
that's a good point. So either let me do blah, 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 or let me address why blah, blah, blah is not the next logical step. So,
Right.
you know,
So
people can help you find those holes.
you did that for me.
Oh, I did?
Yeah. Yeah, because I was trying to figure out like what I could do to analyze the data.
Oh, yeah. Your 525,600 rows of data.
Times 1,000.
Right.
And so Kyla was like, oh, this is easy. We could just put it in MATLAB and figure it out. And
my boy Matt.
Just the process of like working with her to figure out how to like do it in MATLAB helped me be able to then do it in Excel.
Yeah, because your advisor didn't trust
my
MATLAB.
advisor didn't trust the MATLAB.
He worried about the wrong thing.
But like it was a frame of reference.
Yeah,
and that helped me understand things better. So sometimes it does help for you to get like just like one thought from somebody, like, why don't you think about it like this? Why don't you look at the data like that? Why don't you graph it this way?
Right. And I still don't know nothing about asphalt and concrete. Like I can tell you the difference if I see it, but that's it.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're gonna work on that. We'll work on it. I don't know that you need to know the difference, but
I'm just saying I was able to help contribute though, and I don't know the difference.
Just a different material. It's okay.
Oh man.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
Hilarious.
so we have a question about like what if a student becomes discouraged with their dissertation topic?
That's
and, like,
right.
How do they cope with that?
It depends on what stage you're in, I feel like. But go ahead with what you're gonna say.
Well, I was just gonna say, I was in a different world. Like, even like this question to me is funny because it's like grad school can be discouraging, period.
Right.
So I got to the point where I was just like, what do I need to finish?
Correct.
It had nothing to do with the topic, the person who was advising me, what the weather looked like outside, like none of that. It was
get it done.
How do I finish this thing?
Yes.
So that I can go do the things I want to do.
Me and
How?
my friend Clarissa had a saying called "purple elephants," and it came down to
I
like if
remember.
it was like if you want me to put a purple elephant on the front, what shade and how big and what font, like what is the thickness of the line, because it comes down to like whatever it is that you say needs to be on this. Let me
Hmm.
just put it like literally the name of the folder that my dissertation is in and was in is called "To Please the Masses," because it was basically whatever everybody
What?
said needed to be in here, because I felt like at the end of the day I'm just like, oh, okay, you said you like past present future, I'll write in that. Like it was just the craziest alterations where I'm like, I don't even associate with this thing anymore. Like, this is just a document to get finished at this
Listen,
point.
all of that. Like, I analyzed that data 8,000 different ways, I felt like.
Oh my
And
gosh.
at some point, it was like, go back to what you. No, I am not going back. Like, we are here. This is where we are. And I
Right.
am done. But the question, like, if you become discouraged, like, change your frame of reference. Like, don't look at the topic as, like, all you'll ever do in life
Exactly.
and the only contribution you'll ever make. Like, no, that's not it. Like, you're putting too much stock into something that is, at the end of the day, it matters, but it doesn't.
It
Because what
doesn't.
actually matters is a degree.
Right. And the skill set that you develop while getting it. So
Correct.
concentrate on the skills you are honing while completing this, and less on the actual
Check
topic.
the box,
Yes.
say thank you very much, and get up out of there.
Walk across
Because,
that stage, turn your tassel and go.
listen, and don't pay for anything that you don't need to pay for.
Right. Rent that robe. My robe has, I'm not even going to talk about it, but I still
I
have
didn't
not
get
worn my
one.
robe,
Anyways,
including my own graduation.
Kyla,
I
what?
rented and then bought because I became a faculty member. And my first student who graduated was during COVID. So I got to watch
Oh,
an icon walk across the screen.
oh.
So maybe the next one I'll be able to wear it. But that thing has been in a box for 10 years, literally 10 years.
I mean, my dissertation, my what are those things called?
The
My
robe, cap and
no,
gown,
no, my
diploma,
like actual degree.
your diploma.
Yeah, that word, diploma.
Like we playing
my
taboo.
my diploma is in here in a tube somewhere.
Wow.
All three of them.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
need
only
to.
reason
Oh,
mine
right
isn't
here.
in a tube is because someone else took it out of the tube and put it up for me.
It's a fancy tube.
Really?
Oh, look at it.
That is a fancy tube.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a paint by numbers that came in something like that too. So I'm just saying.
Well, I got the
You can frame
cardboard
it.
ones for the other one. It's just plain cardboard. So
Hilarious.
it's they're right. They're here. They're just not on the wall. Cause I don't. Just finish, y'all. Just finish. Nobody's gonna ask to look at the piece of paper.
Sure won't.
They may never even read your dissertation, which is fine, because it helped you get the degree.
It is a means to an end.
Because a finished dissertation is all we need.
Yes, that's the
Not
best
a perfect
dissertation.
one,
A
not the
finished
best
one.
one ever done, a finished one. So
Right.
check the box and keep it moving.
Did we adequately? I think we've adequately discussed what happens when we get discouraged. Keep on pressing. Focus on what matters, and you can pivot afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And I am a full testament to that. Spoiler alert, I have accepted a tenure track position.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop.
It happened, y'all.
Yes.
Like, we talked about it.
Like
I
y'all
feel
ain't know it was gonna happen. Like who was doubtful?
Not I, said the cat. So here I am. And you can fully pivot from one discipline to another discipline to another discipline
Yeah.
and get a tenure track faculty position. Apparently, it's possible.
It is possible. And it's more common than you think. Like, I don't know why the narrative is, oh, you have to come into grad school knowing the be all end all existence for your life. And it must be your life's work. And if you work on anything else, that's not your life's work. You know, it's so ridiculous. Like, work on what's going to get you out. Like, yes, you have to be
Yes.
moderately interested in it. But then if you are not, it is okay. Do what you got to do to get out and change afterwards. Like, don't buy into the whole, I'm not doing exactly what I want to do. I'm upset. I gotta go.
And then
Narrative.
praise Jesus for your freedom.
Exactly. So the next question, I guess the last one is, what happens after the dissertation is written?
A lot of formatting. Is that what you were trying to ask?
No, I'm just reading the question as
I'm just
written.
saying, like,
Yeah.
we didn't talk about that. Like, there are templates for dissertations.
Yeah, start off with it in LaTeX in the template, because LaTeX will just make sure your life is amazing.
Y'all can be basic like me and use Word because your advisor prefers that.
Oh
They can
gosh.
edit in that.
Wow.
But, you know,
can edit LaTeX.
you could if you chose to want to do that. So yeah, you know, whatever the formatting is, like, you have to adhere to it because it's going to be a published document.
Yeah.
And so typically there's like requirements for how it looks, what it looks like. Everybody's looks the same, has the same words on the front, like except for the title and your name.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe your advisor's name. So just like be mindful that it's not just like I'm just writing some stuff on some papers.
Yeah.
And putting chapters and stuff how I want. Like there's fonts, there's specific, there's style
there's
guides,
captions. There's like formats for the captions, appendices.
Style guides.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a glossary sometimes.
you have to adhere to that. And you know, I think once it's submitted, people congratulate you. Usually, it's like,
yeah,
you'd have made it.
I walked out of turning in my dissertation like to the graduate school with all of the things they asked for. The sun was shining brighter. The air was crisper. I called my friend Lydia. I was like, hey, let's go get lunch. Like everything was just, I floated down the street.
Aww.
After I was just like out of the graduate school floating down the streets.
At the University of Florida, which is where I graduated, they give you a bumper sticker that says finally done. So you submit it to the editorial office and you actually have to physically go.
Yeah, we had to physically go. I don't know
if
now.
That's changed because of COVID, but we had to physically go. So they actually can physically hand you a thing. And so I took some pictures with some people in the grad school because they knew me.
Aww.
And it was actually a sunny, beautiful day that day too. And I know what color shirt I had on. It was green and blue. And then my bumper sticker was orange. They alternate between orange and like blue backgrounds. Yeah.
But also people outside of the sensory things that happen after you write your dissertation, some people put that into a journal article or, you know, like a distilled down version of it without all of the details of the dissertation. But, you know, just having something that's like the culmination of your work, you know, as one article or maybe a few articles. I know for me, a lot of my data, I was like just getting it down to the wire. So it was just going straight into the dissertation and I didn't have a chance to like write it. So right after I defended, when I started, you know, my first position, I published 8 papers my first year. One part was because of Carrie Ann Rockmore and her faculty boot camp and just getting stuff done. And the second was I just had a whole lot of data that just needed to get out. And I think I was using that till almost 2012 or 2017. I was like, here's another piece of data that like I can put with something that my lab is doing now into an article where it's like, I can take this and then another thing my lab is doing can expand on this and then put it together. So
I never published mine.
Why, girl?
I have reasons. Mostly like me being very dramatic about how I felt about the whole process, and
no, yours was trauma filled. So
I just decided like I was done, and there will not be another publication or anything related to this work that I did because I'm mad and now I'm in control. So
hey, I feel like it was going to cause you a lot of trauma to actually
it would have.
do
it
that.
Would have made it, and it did. Like I tried initially, and then I was like, "Why am I trying? Like, why do I care? And this makes me really like think about academia as a whole and like how toxic it can be for people. Like, I don't want to be affiliated. I don't want to be connected. I don't want to be in this environment where, and this is like taking this conversation left, but I really feel like
we're here now.
You know, there's this incestuous relationships situation in academia where it's like, I made this person and this person is that person's
Like
relative.
the Bible, this person begat that person begat
right.
that person.
And like, no, I'm done.
Right. I have no ties.
Y'all want to put me on another publication, go right ahead. Because I did do this work.
Right.
But don't expect it to come from me because I'm through. And even though it could benefit my career, I know that I could do other things and continue to be great elsewhere, and did and will.
Right. I know one advisor who has the next student in the lab, or just a more junior student, format a previous student's dissertation for publication as part of their process. So, you know, that is a way to keep the distance, but still not have to get the publication, but you don't get the trauma from it.
I let them know, like, if y'all want to do it, you can. I will not be.
On the list of people who will be, I am not on it. I will not
Not
be.
on it. Not there. I'm cool. Y'all good. Like, y'all got it. And so here I sit. And I'm chilling. Like, I'm really happy. Like,
yeah,
the separation from the trauma has brought me so much joy, and I've not looked back. Like, I tried, and then I was like, I tried, I gave it a good effort, and I'm done.
Yeah, I remember I met you in the middle of the trauma, and from there to now, like, night and day sort of difference. Like, it was one of those, how do I get out of here? These people crazy. And now an assistant professor, tenure track. This person is not a factor in my life anymore.
Got 3 NSF proposals and an NIH award, and living my life, doing things that, like, in my opinion, could change the world.
Yes. And people don't tell that story of how everything doesn't always work the way you think it's going to. It doesn't mean you just have to leave, you know, or just struggle through it. You can completely change your trajectory. You don't need anybody else's permission to do what you want to do.
Or you don't have to stay in that toxic space.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to do the things. You don't have to. And you don't have to explain to anybody why you've chosen not to either. Like, I'm just loud and I'm honest, and I believe in telling people the truth. You ask me a question, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Like, this is what it is.
Yep.
But I also know, like, it helps other people, and that's why I'm honest about it, and that's why I'm saying this. Like, if you don't want to publish your dissertation when you're done, don't.
Who gonna check you, boo? Who gonna check you?
Apparently no one.
Well, I think we've done a good job with the dissertation part. Some of this makes me think that we need either a writing or proposaling episode.
Like an academic thing? Like,
yeah, like one of our
I'm a faculty member or a postdoc or whatever trying to submit a grant.
Yeah, there's a lot of analogies though between like the actual dissertation proposal and grant proposals. So I feel like that might be something. We already have our topics, but you know, we can add stuff in there. Like, as we're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, we don't have that on the list to talk about. So
yeah, we should really think about it. Yeah, could be cool.
So stay tuned for number 4. I'll tell you you'll hear the title when it happens, but stay tuned for the 4th one.
We really don't know.
No, we know. It's just a matter of when we'll do it.
In other words, we don't know.
We know. Okay. Should we tell them what all the topics are?
Mm-mm, no,
Okay.
it's fine.
It's going to be a surprise.
I think you kind of went over it in one of the.
I don't think
the
I
first
did.
one. It's fine.
Okay.
Listen to the podcast.
That's true. Just listen. Just listen. Also, if you made it this far, congratulations. And you should send us a note on Instagram because, like, we feel
Or
like
Twitter.
or Twitter, yes. Engage with us because we be putting stuff out there for y'all. And we're like, are they actually listening? So if you made it this far,
And we know you're listening because we have statistics. So.
yes, we know y'all getting here. So talk to us. And let us know. What I want you to comment is we're about to be at episode 50. What should we do to celebrate 50? Tell us that in the comments. And we'll give you a shout out.
Solid.
All right. Until next time.
Really? Is that how it starts?
I think it does.
That's cute.
We'll see. Are you holding up your sticker?
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.